In this hour, the earth trembles under the weight of decisions that are reshaping the heart of the Holy Catholic Church. A storm of controversy is brewing, a fire ignited not by outsiders, but from the very throne of Peter itself. The world watches with bated breath as the newly elected Supreme Pontiff, Pope Leo XIV, delivers a series of proclamations that have sent shockwaves across every corner of Christendom. For many, it is a moment of divine courage. For others, a moment of great fear. It was during the solemnity of Pentecost on June 8th that Pope Leo XIV stood before the world and declared a vision not of compromise, but of conviction. As political forces rise in every nation, fanning the flames of division and pride, Pope Leo XIV thundered against the powers of nationalism, calling instead for reconciliation, for dialogue, for the unity of God's children under one shepherd. Yet behind these words of peace, a deeper war was being waged, a battle over the very soul of the Church. In private corridors and candle-lit chapels, Vatican insiders whispered of a man walking a dangerous line, blending moderation with unshakable tradition. His voice echoed the gentleness of Pope Francis, but with an iron commitment to the ancient teachings entrusted by Christ himself. On that fateful Pentecost, Leo XIV reaffirmed what many feared to hear, that marriage is and always will be between a man and a woman, not simply as a cultural preference, not as political rhetoric, but as an unchangeable truth written into the very order of creation by the hand of God. As these words rang out from the marble halls of the Vatican, the LGBTQIA+ community erupted in global outcry. Social media platforms flooded with protests. Hashtags surged. Tears were shed. Hearts broke. The phrase LGBTQIA+ community and meltdown after Pope Leo XIV says marriage is between a man and a woman began trending across platforms, igniting fierce debate, accusations, and cries of injustice. But that was only the beginning. For beneath this single declaration, Pope Leo XIV quietly unveiled a series of reforms that, together, may alter the Catholic Church forever. 10 decisions. 10 reforms. 10 shockwaves that will ripple into eternity. Insiders have already begun calling it the purification of the bride. Behind closed doors, the Pope is dismantling long-entrenched bureaucracies. Financial corruption is being rooted out. Networks of abuse, long hidden in shadows, are now being forced into the light. Victims, once silenced, are being heard at last. The Pope has pledged full cooperation with investigations that many cardinals hoped would remain buried. Entire financial departments are being restructured, as Vatican coffers once plagued with scandal are now subjected to forensic audits led by secular authorities. And yet, even as his hands cleanse the temple, Leo XIV's reforms stretch into the realm of doctrine itself. He has signaled cautious openness to an expanded role for women, allowing them unprecedented authority within the Vatican's lay structures, yet firmly drawing a line against priestly ordination. Discussions of female deacons have surfaced, stirring both hope and rage among differing factions. Cardinal Luis Tagle, once thought to be a leading candidate for the papacy himself, now serves as one of Pope Leo's most trusted confidants. It was Tagle who placed the fisherman's ring on Leo's hand, a symbolic act seen by many as a gesture of absolute loyalty. He has since spoken of Leo as humble, deeply prayerful, and possessing an almost prophetic clarity. Together they form a dangerous alliance, one rooted in both reform and orthodoxy, threatening powerful forces on both extremes of the Church. But as this reformation sweeps forward, internal resistance grows. The Catholic right, once skeptical of Leo's election, now observes with a mixture of hope and dread. Rumors swirl in Vatican corridors that secret negotiations may restore wider access to the traditional Latin Mass, an olive branch to the guardians of tradition, who see in Leo an unlikely ally against the chaos of modernism. And yet, there is a mystery still unfolding. For while Pope Leo has boldly reaffirmed the traditional teaching on marriage, his position on fiducia supplicans, the Vatican document allowing non-sacramental blessings of same-sex couples remains a deliberate ambiguity. He has neither fully embraced nor outright condemned it, leaving both liberals and conservatives uncertain of his ultimate trajectory. Is this silence a tactical pause, a test of obedience, or is it a prelude to something far more dramatic? Even now, as the LGBTQIA+ community reels from his words, many Catholics cling to the Pope's middle path as a sign of hope, that perhaps, while marriage remains defined, the Church may yet offer compassion without compromise, a difficult road that few dare to walk. But this drama is not merely political. This is not simply the story of a man or an institution. This is the unfolding of prophecy, the shaking of the nations, the purification of the bride of Christ before the Lord returns in glory, and in this moment, the entire world stands at a crossroad. For the Church of Rome is no ordinary institution. It is the vessel through which the keys of heaven have been handed down from Peter to this very hour. And now, under Pope Leo XIV, heaven's agenda presses forward while the kingdoms of men scramble to respond. Demonic principalities rage against the altar. Angelic hosts are dispatched to wage war in the unseen realms. The prayers of the saints rise like incense, crying out, "How long, O Lord?" But there is more to this than meets the eye. Even as the global LGBTQIA+ communities weep, even as political leaders issue statements of condemnation, even as factions inside the Vatican plot their counter-moves, one question echoes through the halls of eternity. Has the clock begun to strike for the final purification of the Church? Stay with me, for what is unfolding next will shake not only the Vatican, but the entire world. And so it begins. The world is being drawn into a cosmic confrontation, not by accident, not by politics, not by the hands of men alone, but by the divine hand of Almighty God. For what we are witnessing in these days is not merely a change of leadership, it is the beginning of the great sifting. The Catholic Church, the bride of Christ, has entered into a season unlike any other since the days of Peter and Paul. For decades, corruption has festered within her walls. Secret factions have risen like vipers among the clergy. Networks of power and sin have entrenched themselves in the very courts of the Vatican. But now the Sovereign Lord declares from heaven, enough. As Pope Leo XIV ascends the chair of Peter, he does so under the burning eyes of both heaven and hell. The angels have been summoned to witness. The demons have been stirred into violent frenzy. The saints watch from the balconies of eternity, and the blood of the martyrs cries out from beneath the altar. The holy city is trembling. Behind the gilded walls of the Vatican, a war of unimaginable proportions has already begun. Not one fought with swords and armies, but one far more dangerous, a battle of souls, of doctrines, of truth and deception, of light clashing against darkness within the very sanctuary of God's house. Even now, as Pope Leo XIV moves swiftly through the ancient halls, his every step is watched by powerful men who wear the garments of holiness but harbor hearts of rebellion. Secret factions gather in hidden chambers. Some whisper of compromise and modernization. Others conspire for control and dominion. And some few, the most dangerous of all, cloak their heresies beneath masks of piety, hoping to drag the bride of Christ into apostasy before her groom returns. But the Holy Spirit is not blind. Pope Leo XIV, though mild in speech, has become the lightning rod for the purifying fire of God. His decisions, seemingly modest to the eyes of the world, are in truth seismic tremors shaking the very pillars of the global Catholic Church. First came the declaration on marriage. Marriage, established by God, remains the sacred union between one man and one woman, for the procreation of life, for the stability of the family, and for the reflection of Christ's covenant with his Church. These words, though ancient, struck like a sword. The LGBTQIA+ communities wailed. Political leaders condemned. Social media erupted in storms of rage. But the statement was not intended to please the world. It was intended to please heaven. But that was only the first trumpet blast. For even as Leo XIV spoke, his deeper agenda unfolded like the pages of an ancient prophecy. 10 reforms, 10 pillars, reshaping the Catholic Church forever. Financial temples, torn down. The sacred treasury of the Vatican, long a playground for corrupt stewards, is now under forensic investigation. Accountants armed not with ledgers but with subpoenas are scouring decades of deceit. Cardinals once untouchable now tremble behind closed doors, as secret offshore accounts, bribes, and hidden assets are being dragged into the light. What was once whispered in marble corridors is now shouted in the courts of heaven. My house shall be called a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves. The clerical purge. Files long buried are being opened. Allegations of abuse, once smothered beneath layers of bureaucracy, now stand exposed. Bishops and priests, once protected by the old guard, are being summoned to face judgment. Civil authorities, no longer restrained, have been empowered to act. Victims, once voiceless, are being heard before the throne of God. The rise of the lay faithful. Women and lay leaders, long barred from positions of governance, are now being elevated, not to the priesthood, but to powerful administrative offices, granting them oversight once reserved for the episcopal elite. The laity are being drawn into the battlefield, their voices empowered as defenders of orthodoxy and purity. The unfolding mystery of fiducia, supplicans. Though Leo XIV reaffirmed marriage, his silence on fiducia supplicans continues to unnerve both progressives and traditionalists. His refusal to fully embrace or fully reject the document leaves the Church in a state of divine tension, as if heaven itself is watching to see who will remain faithful when clarity is delayed. This ambiguity has become a sword dividing hearts, separating those who seek God's truth from those who twist mercy into license. The Latin Mass rumors. Within the most sacred liturgies, whispers grow louder. Rumors circulate that Leo XIV may soon lift certain restrictions placed upon the traditional Latin Mass, a gesture that would simultaneously comfort traditionalists while further polarizing his progressive enemies. The Mass of the Ages, once suppressed, may soon resound again in cathedrals across the earth, a visible sign that the bride of Christ is being summoned back to her first love. And while these reforms unfold on earth, far greater battles rage in the heavens. The principalities and powers, ancient demons assigned to destroy the Church, are being shaken from their posts. The Queen of Heaven, the Blessed Virgin Mary, raises her standard against them. Her immaculate heart, promised at Fatima, stands as the shield of the faithful. The third secret of Fatima, long debated, long hidden, now casts its long shadow once more. Many believe that what is unfolding under Pope Leo XIV is not coincidence, but the exact moment foreseen by the Virgin, when the Church would endure its final trial before the triumph of her Immaculate Heart. And yet, even now, more shocking, rumors emerge. Inside the Vatican, multiple intelligence sources whisper of the Council of Darkness, a secretive group of high-ranking clergy and influential secular allies working to undermine Leo XIV's mission. These men, terrified of losing their power, have begun to explore desperate measures. Some whisper of attempting to force the Pope into resignation. Others discuss new heresies they plan to release into the synodal processes. And some contemplate darker, more unthinkable plots. But heaven watches and heaven warns. The Archangel Michael has drawn his sword. The time of shaking has begun. The words of Christ echo louder than ever. I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Yet the battle will grow darker before the dawn. The bride of Christ is being purified. The weeds are being separated from the wheat. The false shepherds are being unmasked. The wolves are being exposed. The Holy Catholic Church stands upon the precipice of her greatest trial and her greatest triumph. The question remains, who will stand faithful as the storm intensifies? The shaking has only just begun, and as the storm thickens over the eternal city, the veil between the visible and invisible grows thinner. For what many in the world see as political maneuvering, as administrative reforms, as mere ecclesiastical adjustments, the eyes of heaven perceive as the unfolding of ancient and terrible prophecies written long ago by the prophets, by the seers, by the saints who glimpsed this hour under divine revelation. The bride of Christ is standing at the edge of her long-foretold Great Tribulation. Even now, the secret factions within the Vatican intensify their desperate councils. Meetings held in candlelit halls deep beneath the Apostolic Palace bear names the public will never hear. Their members, princes of the Church, speak in hushed voices of containment, damage control, and alternative paths. These men, dressed in crimson and purple, sworn to serve Christ, have instead conspired to preserve their own kingdoms. But Pope Leo XIV moves with an authority not of his own. For in the silence of his private chapel, beneath the golden glow of the Eucharistic flame, he has cried out to heaven, and heaven has answered. This Pope, seen by many as mild, unassuming, even fragile, has become the unexpected instrument of heaven's purifying fire. It is as though God himself has chosen a vessel whom the powers of men would underestimate. And so the great divide within the Church now widens. On one side stand the remnant, faithful clergy, consecrated religious, and devout laity. Those who kneel before the Blessed Sacrament and cling to the ancient teachings passed down from Peter. They see in Pope Leo XIV a sign that God has not abandoned his bride, but is now cleansing her in preparation for the final wedding feast of the Lamb. On the other side stand the rebels, powerful cardinals, influential bishops, progressive theologians, secular elites, and even infiltrators planted by forces long hostile to the Church. They whisper of new understandings, of morality, of modern interpretations, of doctrine, of an inclusive Church that bends to the spirit of the age rather than to the spirit of truth. But the spirit of truth will not be mocked. Even now, the heavenly court has begun to release signs and wonders to awaken the sleeping faithful. Mysterious celestial signs have appeared in the skies above Rome. Unexplained light phenomena that many dismiss, but which others see as harbingers of the times. Marian statues weep silently in remote villages, and seers report visions of Our Lady speaking with grave sorrow for her wayward children. Priests in distant monasteries have fallen to their knees, overcome with sudden visitations of angelic presence warning them. The bride is entering her agony. Strengthen the faithful, fortify the Church. The hour draws near. Meanwhile, the world stage erupts in chaos. As Leo XIV boldly condemns the rise of political nationalism, wars threaten to ignite in regions long held in fragile peace. Economies totter, alliances fracture. Global leaders, once seeking to court the favor of the Vatican, now lash out in fury at the Pope's refusal to submit to modern ideologies. The LGBTQIA+ community continues to boil with outrage. Activists demand the Pope reverse his affirmation of marriage as divinely instituted between man and woman. The media paints Leo XIV as regressive, a betrayer of progress. But the Pope remains unmoved, for his loyalty is not to the applause of men, but to the eternal decrees of Almighty God. The enemy now sees that the Holy Catholic Church, though battered, still carries within her the indestructible seed of truth. And so the demonic forces escalate. In the unseen realms, fallen angels, ancient principalities who once prowled Babylon, Rome, and the great empires, now encircle the Vatican, whispering into the ears of corrupt leaders, inciting betrayal, tempting scandal, and plotting schism. They seek to bring forth what the mystics have long warned of, the Great Apostasy. But the gates of hell shall not prevail. For even as darkness gathers, God is raising up an army of hidden saints, humble priests offering Mass in silence, religious sisters praying hidden rosaries behind cloistered walls, Catholic families teaching their children the true faith amid a generation of confusion. These unknown warriors are the living response to the Pope's call for purification. And then, in a divine twist that none foresaw, shocking new documents have surfaced, ancient Vatican archives long locked away. Rumors suggest these hidden scrolls contain prophecies handed down by the early church fathers, warnings of a future time when Rome itself would be tested to its very foundations. Their message? That the final test of the church would not come from outside persecution alone, but from infiltration within her own hierarchy. The Council of Darkness, the inner circle of the rebellious cardinals, grows increasingly restless. They have begun secret talks with global institutions who have long sought to break the Church's moral authority once and for all. Their plan? A final synod, one that would attempt to rewrite doctrine itself. A synod that, if successful, would fracture the unity of the Catholic Church and force millions into a moment of painful choice, to remain faithful to the eternal magisterium, or to follow the new gospel of compromise and false mercy. But heaven is not silent. The Blessed Virgin, as Queen of the Church, continues to intervene in visions granted to chosen souls. In one such vision, shared by a mystic priest in Italy, Our Lady spoke, "My children, the time of the sifting is upon you. The shepherd has been struck, and the wolves circle. But the hand of my Son is stretched forth. Those who remain faithful to his sacred heart and my immaculate heart will be protected beneath my mantle in the days of darkness to come." Pope Leo XIV senses this hour. His face, pale and burdened, carries the weight of countless prayers. Behind his private doors, he has spoken to trusted confidants of his awareness that his papacy may be brief, that forces are aligning for a confrontation, unlike any seen since the days of the Great Councils. Yet, even knowing this, he presses forward. He is not afraid, for he knows. The bride of Christ does not belong to the powers of this world. She belongs to the Lamb who was slain. The days ahead will reveal much more. The purification has only begun. The blood of the martyrs will once again stain the garments of the Church. The heavens will roar with signs. The world will tremble as the great shaking reaches its climax.